My name is Claire Donovan, and I want you to understand something about me before this story begins. I am not a dramatic person. I don't cause scenes. I don't cry in public. I don't make enemies. I have spent my entire adult life being the woman who keeps her head down, does the work, and lets her results speak for themselves. That's exactly why what happened that Thursday night at Remy's, the most exclusive steakhouse in the capital, shook me to my absolute core. I had been working at Hargrove & Stein Financial Consulting for 4 years. My boss, Gregory Walsh, had hand-selected me to lead the pitch for our biggest client of the year, Marcus Ellison, a self-made billionaire who had turned a logistics startup into a $2.4 billion empire in under a decade. This dinner was the final step. If Marcus signed with us, it was a $14 million contract. It would be the single largest deal in the company's 22-year history. I had prepared for 6 weeks. I knew Marcus Ellison's portfolio better than he did. I had color-coded spreadsheets, risk analysis models, and a 3-year growth projection that my colleagues called the most thorough pitch document they had ever seen. Gregory had looked me in the eye that morning and said, "Claire, tonight is yours." I arrived at Remy's at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. The restaurant was warm and amber lit, with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling like golden stars. The kind of place where deals were sealed and futures were decided. I wore my deep green silk dress, the one I had been saving for a special occasion, and I felt ready. Calm, focused. Marcus Ellison arrived at 7:02 p.m. with his assistant. Gregory arrived with 2 senior partners, David Osei and Patricia Lim. We were seated at the center table, white linen and leather menus, crystal glasses already filled with sparkling water. Everything was perfect. For 45 minutes, everything was perfect. Marcus asked sharp questions and I answered every single one with precision. Gregory was visibly impressed. David Osei leaned over and whispered, "She's incredible." Patricia was smiling. Marcus himself had stopped looking at his phone, and for a man like Marcus Ellison, that meant you had his full attention. Then the door opened. I noticed him because the hostess seemed confused. She gestured toward a waiting area, but he walked past her with a confidence that suggested he owned the floor. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy blue pinstripe suit with a burgundy tie. He was holding his phone in front of him like he was reading something. And he was walking directly toward our table. I didn't recognize him. Not at first. He stopped 2 feet from me, looked down at me with an expression I can only describe as controlled fury, and said loudly enough for the entire table, and the tables nearby, to hear. "Ms. Donovan, I think it's time everyone here knows exactly who they're doing business with." The room went quiet. My heart stopped. Gregory's face turned to stone. Marcus Ellison sat back slowly in his chair. David and Patricia exchanged glances. I looked up at this man and said, as calmly as I could manage, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He turned his phone screen toward me. On it was a photograph. I felt the color drain from my face, not because of what I had done, but because of what I was looking at. It was a photograph of me, at a coffee meeting, sitting across from a man named Robert Crane, the lead consultant at Meridian Group, our direct competitor. The photo was taken 3 weeks ago. The timestamp was visible. The man in the suit said, "This is you meeting with Meridian Group's lead consultant while you were supposed to be representing Hargrove & Stein exclusively. You want to tell Mr. Ellison what you were doing there." I heard Patricia inhale sharply. Gregory's jaw was tight. Marcus Ellison said nothing, but he was watching me with the careful, measuring eyes of a man who had survived 1,000 betrayals. And I sat there, in my green silk dress, in the most beautiful restaurant in Washington, D.C., on the most important night of my career, and I felt the floor fall out from beneath me. The man's name, I would later learn, was Damon Hargrove, the son of the founding partner, William Hargrove, who had retired 3 years ago. Damon had recently returned to take an advisory role in the firm. He had been conducting what he called internal loyalty audits, reviewing staff relationships and outside contacts. He had seen the photo, drawn his own conclusions, and decided that the appropriate response was to confront me publicly, in front of the client we were courting, at the most critical moment possible. He had not asked me. He had not called me. He had not given me the dignity of a private conversation. He had walked into that restaurant and detonated a bomb at my table. I took one breath, then another, and then I spoke. Mr. Hargrove, I said, the man in that photograph is Robert Crane. That is correct. I met with him at Compass Coffee on March 4th at 10:15 in the morning. The meeting lasted 31 minutes. Damon stared at me. He hadn't expected calm. I continued. Robert Crane is my cousin. His mother and my mother are sisters. He called me because his daughter, my niece, was being bullied at school and he didn't know how to handle it. We met for coffee to talk about it. I have the text thread, the call log, and if you'd like, I can call his wife right now and put her on speaker. Silence. I also have, on my phone, the signed non-disclosure agreement I filed with HR 4 years ago, which clearly documents my family relationship with Robert Crane and explicitly states that our personal relationship creates no conflict of interest because I do not share client information with him and never have. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the document, slid it across the table to Gregory Walsh. Gregory looked at it. His face changed completely. Marcus Ellison leaned forward. He picked up the phone, read the document, and then looked up at Damon Hargrove with an expression that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Young man, Marcus said quietly, you just interrupted a $14 million negotiation to accuse your own employee, without evidence, without due process, and without the basic courtesy of a private conversation, of something she documented and disclosed 4 years ago. On her first week, Damon opened his mouth. Marcus raised one hand. I'm not finished. The entire restaurant was silent. Even the kitchen seemed to pause. I built my company, Marcus continued, by learning one lesson above everything else. The most dangerous person in any organization is not the one who makes mistakes. It's the one who assumes the worst about people who are doing the work while they are not in the room. He looked at me. Ms. Donovan, your presentation tonight was exceptional. You have my business. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and looked at Gregory Walsh. I'd also suggest that going forward, the people making decisions about who represents your firm should actually know who they're talking about before they walk into a room. And then Marcus Ellison shook my hand, nodded to Gregory, and walked out, his assistant hurrying behind him. Damon Hargrove stood at the edge of the table. He looked at the phone in his hand. He looked at me, and then, without a word, he walked back toward the door. Gregory Walsh was the first to speak. He looked at me for a long moment and said, Claire, I owe you an apology. Yes, I said, you do. 3 weeks later, the $14 million contract was signed. I was promoted to senior partner, the first woman under 35 in the firm's history to hold that title. Damon Hargrove quietly resigned his advisory role the following month. And I still wear that green dress. Because I earned the right to wear it in any room I walk into. Había pasado 7 años construyendo mi carrera desde cero. 7 años de despertadores a las 4 de la mañana, vacaciones canceladas, cumpleaños perdidos, y almuerzos solitarios en mi escritorio. Y en la noche más importante de mi vida profesional, dentro de uno de los restaurantes más elegantes de Washington, D.C., un hombre que nunca había visto camino directamente hacia mi mesa, sosteniendo su teléfono como si fuera un arma. No era mesero, no era colega, lavaba un traje azul marino a rayas que costaba más que mi primer auto. Y la expresión en su rostro no era enojo. Era algo mucho más peligroso, era certeza. Cada persona en ese restaurant volteó a mirar. Los tenedores dejaron de moverse. Las conversaciones murieron. Mi jefe, mi cliente, y dos socios senior me miraban como si yo hubiera hecho algo imperdonable. Y en ese momento pensé, este es el fin de todo lo que construí. Estaba equivocada, pero todavía no lo sabía. Mi nombre es Claire Donovan, y quiero que entiendas algo sobre mí antes de que empiece esta historia. No soy una persona dramática. No caso escenas, no loro en público, no me hago enemigos. He pasado toda mi vida adulta siendo la mujer que trabaja en silencio, es el trabajo, y deja que sus resultados hablen por ella. Por eso exactamente, lo que sucedió ese jueves por la noche en Remis, el steakhouse más exclusivo de la capital, me sacudió hasta los huesos. Lavaba cuatro años trabajando en Hargrove and Stein Financial Consulting. Mi jefe, Gregory Walsh, me había elegido personalmente para liderar la presentación para nuestro cliente más importante del año. Marcus Ellison, un milenario hecho así mismo que había convertido una startup de logística en un imperio de $2.40 mil millones en menos de una década. Esta cena era el paso final. Si Marcus firmaba con nosotros, era un contrato de $14 millones. El acuerdo